going to wrap this up and move on like we
Yep.
do every week to Real or Not. You talked about this weekend. So Real or Not, the Knicks go 2-0 this weekend. Win over the Cavs, win over the Celtics. The Knicks are 0-3 against both of these teams this season, 3 games. Not so good against Boston. You can see right there, minus 50-point differential. 0-1 against Cleveland, and which was a very competitive game that the Knicks were winning at one point. Bryan, are you going super optimistic and the Knicks beat both the top 2 teams in the Eastern Conference this weekend?
I don't. I actually think there's a better chance that they lose both games this weekend.
Oh my God.
I think they have. I might regret saying this. I think they have a better chance of winning the Boston game than the Cleveland one, because not even just the back-to-back and traveling to Cleveland overtime elements that we've already talked about, but also Boston's been shaky at home this season for whatever reason. Cleveland's much better at home this year during the regular season. Cleveland's also like they're going to have their main characters, so to speak, in terms of health. And with Boston, they've just been shaky at home. They don't cover at home either. Like that's a game that could be closer, that projects to be a little bit closer. And then when you sort of just look at not even just their home performances, the Celtics did just blow out Philadelphia. But if you look at just on the horizon, like this game against the Knicks comes at a time where we'll see how the Knicks look coming out of this game against Cleveland. But I think this is a more favorable sort of spot if you're the Knicks than this game against Cleveland, given that you're coming off the back-to-back. So,
yeah, I can't go with the Knicks going 2-0 this weekend. I'm going to say they go 1-1. I'm going to say they split.
You think they get one? Which one do they get? Boston doesn't. Boston's going to have. I was just looking this up. They're going to have 2 days. They're going to have 3 days. 2 days of rest in between. They don't play tonight or tomorrow.
I think I'm with you that the Knicks, if they're going to win one, it's going to be the Boston one. I don't know why I have a feeling about that. I think they're going to be motivated. They know they have to figure some things out. I think you might get OG at least back in that game, and Hart. I'm going to go with the Boston game. And I will say, I think if they win that game, I said this at the top, I think it would mean more. Because Boston, as good as Cleveland has played and all this other stuff, Boston's the defending champs. They are the measuring stick.
Yeah.
And I will also add this. I think the Knicks will be competitive in both these games. I will say that.
Okay.
I do think they'll be competitive.
I don't disagree with that.
I do think they will be good games. And I think we'll be talking a lot next week about what we've learned from these games. That's going to be and what they can take from these games going forward. Now, if the Knicks get smashed in both these games, y'all going to be miserable. I know y'all going to be miserable out there. You think Knicks 100 a game was yelling now? Woo! He's going to be on fire next week if they lose to the Cavs and the Celtics. And listen, I would understand really at that point where I'm not going to call it a 5-alarm fire, but you want to be concerned, really, really concerned. Yeah, I can understand that. If they get smashed by the Cavs and the Celtics, especially with how they've looked against the Celtics this weekend, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be a good look. The Knicks there's going to be a lot of questions about the Knicks where you're going to feel like, okay, is this as good as they are? Is like this their ceiling? You know, I've given them the grace to say, yes, there's another level you can go to. This is what the regular season is about. You have opportunities to figure things out. Everything is not perfect. This is a team with 3 new starters. I still will maintain this. This team is still working things out. They still have to figure things out. And I know nobody wants to hear this, but there's a better chance that the team you see past this season is better. This is year 1 of this team as they are, and there's still more tweaks to go. So I think the expectation sometimes for people that they were just going to add Bridges, add Cat, and they were going to just be right there with Boston. I never expected that. I thought this was a work in progress, and this is going to be a work in progress. But I do think at some time you got to show out. You got to show out. You got to show up and show something. And this is why these games are big. It's time for the Knicks to show something. And I was in the locker room after the last Boston game, and that was a down Knicks locker room, as it should have been. And the guys talked about needing to figure things out. They had to go back to the drawing board. We'll see. That's how I am about everything in life. It's about how you respond. They got their ass kicked last time they played the Celtics.
Yeah.
How are they going to respond? We'll see. And they know where the Cavs is. This is a great opportunity. What are you going to do with the opportunity? That's
Sure.
what it comes down to for me. It's really not that deep. Look, if they don't do well with the opportunity, it's not going to be a good look. I'll be the first person to come back here next week on the show and say it. And I'm sure we'll be talking about it on Monday's show. That's going to be a huge part of what we talk about. So we'll see.
Let me throw a couple Boston things at you real quick before we move on to the next real or not. After a win, they're 10-28-1 against the spread, which is second worst in the NBA, which is basically telling you after a win, they're in a lot of close games. Granted, a lot of these spreads have been like 13, 14 points because they're just overwhelmingly favored against some of these other teams because of what we saw last season. That's one indicator. Two, they're just 17-10 at home, just straight up wins and losses. 17-10 for a team that's 40-16 is not awesome, but they're 23-6 on the road, so that's something to keep in mind. But Cleveland has a better record. The Knicks have a better record. They're 20-10 at the Garden this year. 17-10 is matched by Orlando at home, which is interesting because Orlando has been very bad on the road, and Milwaukee is even 18-9. Indiana is 15-8, so they're in that sort of territory like after. So at home, they're not a juggernaut at all this season. Also, as a home favorite, 10-17 against the spread. They cover 37% of the time. The sample size there, like among teams with a sample size as a home favorite, they're one of the 6-7 worst in the NBA at covering. So they're in a lot of close games at home is the point. So if your expectation is that the Knicks, you just want to see them play a close game in Boston, the numbers in this spot are on your side. But we'll see.
The only thing for the Knicks fan is like they've seen two games where the Knicks have gotten their behinds whooped. And, Robert Rivera's checking and said he thinks the Knicks show up tonight. It's a decent matchup, but Boston is another story.
That could happen too.
I understand why you feel that. I understand why you feel that way, Robert Rivera. I understand why you feel that way. Keensaw says Dex got a fat bear collection, almost rivals my own. I do have a little NBA bear collection back there. Got my Steelers bear. It's pretty good. Granted, some of the NBA players, a good amount of them have been traded or no longer with the teams. That's why they're hiding in the back. You can't really see them like that. So, like my Luka Doncic one is hiding back there. So yeah, that's changed. What was my favorite NBA Jam squad? I was somebody who played a lot with the Sonics. I see you were playing with the Sonics. I played with the Knicks, and I liked the Hornets back in the day. Those are my teams I used to rock with an NBA Jam Tournament Edition. One of the greatest games of all time. So that's it. Second, real or not, Mitchell Robinson. Okay, he is cleared for 5-on-5 contact in practice. Will he return before March 1st? That is next Saturday, folks.
That's already. Yeah,
that's a little over a week now. Do we see Mitchell Robinson playing sometime next week before March 1st? Yes, yay or nay?
This is so tough. I was trying to look this up earlier. I couldn't get a clear-cut answer on like what's the average NBA time, Dex, from like when you get cleared for 5-on-5 up to when you play. But I also think it varies because of like different injuries, injury
right.
lengths,
Is it lower body, is it upper body? Right.
And that leads me to just looking at the sort of games on the schedule. So let's go through this after these two games we're talking about. There's Philly at home Wednesday. It seems like that's a logical place to drop in Mitchell Robinson if he's ready to go.
Do you want to do that though? Do you want to bring him back against the man who injured him last year in the playoffs?
Yeah, for revenge. Also, I'm not even sure Joel Embiid. Like, you can't bank on him playing on a night-to-night basis. You know what I mean? Like, that's just kind of how it goes. The Sixers do not have a back-to-back, so it's possible that Joel Embiid does play that game. But then after that, you're in Memphis, and then you're in Miami Friday and Sunday next week. And then you're at home on March 4th against Golden State, and then the road trip. I would think he's back by the road trip, which begins on March 6th. March 1st, I'm not sure. But if I'm the Knicks, I want to start getting him ramped up as soon as he's physically able and 100% ready to do so. So you don't want to, for lack of a better way of putting it, waste too much time because playoffs are coming. You want to start ramping up Mitchell Robinson as soon as you can. You just need to make sure he's healthy enough to do it. Of note, because I'm sure Mitchell Robinson, like I don't know how many back to backs he's gonna play. The Knicks have a back to back on March 6th, March 7th. So if he does come back for that road trip, he may just sit one game right away, right off the bat. And other than that, you have a March 25th, 26th back to back. Both of those are at home. That's Dallas and the Clippers. And
Mm.
then April, you have April 1st and 2nd. You have Philly and then in Cleveland. So both games in Cleveland this year on the second of a back to back. So that's going to be important to note before the playoffs. And then the 5th and 6th, you have the Hawks and Suns. And then the 10th and 11th, you have the Pistons and the Cavs. So that's interesting, Dex. They have 3 games against the Cavs this year that are the second half of back to backs. That's kind of messed up, honestly, as it pertains to us, like sort of handicapping the playoffs, if you will, if the Knicks do in fact play the Cavs. That's something we got to remember is that 3 of the 4 games against Cleveland this year, second half of back to backs, including both road games.
Yeah, that is something to know. Yeah, I don't see Mitch returning before March 1st. I think they're going to be cautious with this. I think there's a chance that Golden State game. I don't think that's crazy. I think that's on the 4th, or like you said, the road trip that's coming up after that. I think that's a little more likely, but I don't see him before the 1st.
I agree.
Which brings us to our last real or not, which is another injury a note, and that is around Josh Hart. And should we be concerned about Josh Hart's lingering knee injury? I think the question around this for real or not is, does Josh Hart play this weekend? Do you see him against Boston? Do you see him against Cleveland tonight? You know, day to day is what Tom Thibodeau said yesterday before the game. Said he's just dealing with some, soreness, but this has been lingering. Josh Hart's been questionable for quite a while and has played through it. I think it's interesting the Knicks didn't play him yesterday, which tells I think he will play today. I do think he will play tonight. I don't have any information on that, but I just think he will. So we'll see. How concerned are you about this, and do you think he'll play this weekend?
So the injury itself is patellofemoral pain syndrome. I think I said that right, which is also known as runner's knee. This is per our own Mark Sanchez, who spoke to a physical therapist about this injury and the potential seriousness of it. And the article is basically indicating that it could be much worse. Like it's actually not as bad as it sounds at all.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I am concerned just because it's the NBA. Josh Hart plays a very lovable yet crash course style of basketball that, it's high contact, it's high effort, and that's something you got to watch for. If you're looking at just injury reports, he's been questionable for the better part of a month or almost a month of games now at this point. And it's a knee injury ultimately. Now, there's no word in here that says tear or sprain or anything like that. It basically is a condition that you have pain around your kneecap, so to speak. Like it's just a throbbing sort of sensation, so to speak, to some degree. And here in the article, Charles Himaki with NYU Langone Health said, I don't think it's going to derail anyone's season. And of the heart injury, Tom Thibodeau says he's just day to day right now. So they're going to evaluate it. We'll see if he plays tonight. So I don't think it's something to be concerned about from a long-term perspective. It appears to me, though, like I'm going to be monitoring it because, ultimately just on the surface, it's a knee injury. It seems pretty painful and it's lingering. And you don't want this lingering, preferably 2 months from now when the playoffs are going.
Mm-hmm.
And Josh Hart is a physical NBA player who is an overachiever who goes up and gets 10 rebounds. He can get 15 on any given night. Like it's kind of like when you have a running back that gets a lot of contact and they have a sort of lingering injury, like you want to take down their carries a little bit, monitor them before the playoffs. So I would look for spots to get Josh Hart a little bit of additional rest down the stretch if this continues to linger.
Oh yeah, the Minutes Police, they're gonna be all over this. And they should. they should. They're gonna be all over this, and they should. My concern is how much of this does it stop Josh Hart from doing Josh Hart things, right? Like how much does it limit him from crashing the boards as effectively as he can, being able to push with pace, helping, Jalen Brunson with some of the playmaking. That's my concern. I think it's something to monitor. So if he does come back tonight, I'm going to really be watching closely. Does he have that same level of aggressiveness? We hadn't seen anything before. He did have the All-Star break to rest up a little bit. The Knicks held him out. I think that might have been just a little bit precautionary, especially with this back-to-back and knowing he's going to probably play some high and stressful minutes, hopefully if the Knicks are in these games against the Cavs in Boston. So for me, my concern level is like at a 3, but I think it's
mine is a little higher than that.
A little higher than that. Yeah. I think it's about seeing. I need to see what it looks like when it comes back, because it could be 3 right now, but after tonight, let's say if he plays, it could be at a 7. We'll see.
Even though it's the start of a back-to-back, I don't love missing the first game after an All-Star break. I didn't love that. Now, granted, he practiced Tuesday, did not practice Wednesday, and Thibodeau says it's basically soreness. But Thibodeau's old school, you know what I mean? So I do wonder about that. Not that my concern meter would probably be like a 5, so that's like moderate. It's just like, paying attention to it, but I don't think it's going to be long.
Yeah, it's really hard for me to say until like if he doesn't. Even if he doesn't play tonight, I'm not like overly concerned about that. But I think if he does play tonight, I'll be definitely watching. I'll have an extra eye on him and like how he plays. How aggressive is he? Does he seem limited? Because that's the thing you don't want. When somebody's an injury, you don't want them compromised or not being able to go somewhat close to what they normally would. Maybe they won't be 100% in terms of speed, but you don't want to move in at 70, 75%, because that's where you can get hurt in a lot of ways.